what's happening right here, right now, is what it's all about, is what all the fuss is about. In all religions, all gods, all symbols of divine qualities, all refer to nothing other than this event that's happening right here, right now. So you can become a scholar, become expert at the iconography of the various Hindu gods or the Tibetan gods, and every symbol that's depicted on every god and every portion of their myth all refers to particular qualities of divinity. And every single one of those qualities can be found nowhere other than right here, right now. The same thing applies to all the great and, of course, even the not-so-great human philosophies, spiritual philosophies, scientific philosophies. All are concerned with this event right here, this fact right here. Now, the typical pattern for most people who are interested in spirituality is to delve into these various systems, to delve into these religions and these philosophies and these practices that have all sorts of elaborations and terminologies, and they may have elaborate symbolisms you have to learn, elaborate behaviors you have to learn, all of which refer to nothing other than this event right here. So, in effect, approaching this in that way consists of departing from this into all these elaborate systems of symbolism as a supposed strategy to approach this, which has been right here all along, or which is where you started from. My suggestion is, why not just be with this? If this is what all the fuss is about, if this is the finish line of spirituality, if this is reality itself, why not simply be with this and let it show you what it is? A major challenge to this is the extent to which we are all so thoroughly steeped in human semantic systems and human logic and the logic that is implicit in our language. And so we approach this with this powerful set of preconceptions of, it must be a thing or include things because there's nouns. It must be an action or include action because there's verbs. It must have qualities because there's adverbs and adjectives and the nouns that are qualitative and all of this. So we have a powerful set of preconceptions, a powerful bias of what we expect to find here when we investigate it, what we expect to see. And in terms of the difficulty of our task, the unfortunate fact is that what is to be found here in no way corresponds, even in the slightest degree, to anything whatsoever that is implied by human semantic systems, by the structure of our language, by human logic. So this can be a big challenge. We need to free ourselves or somehow set aside our accumulated bias and our 40, 50, 30, 60, however many years of indoctrination in human logic in order to be able to approach this as it is. We have a big advantage. We have an asset. We have a point of entry, which is that what we are is what this is. So we already have very direct experience at a level which is much more primal than these abstract levels implied by human logic and human semantic systems. We are, and that is an irrational, self-evident fact that in no way corresponds to logic, that in no way corresponds to semantic structure, that is exactly as it is. So we already have our foot in the door. We already have a point of contact with this that we are investigating, which is a wonderful advantage if we have the good fortune or luck to be able to take advantage of it, to be able to notice the profound power of this fact that you already are, you exist, and this existence, this very being, is not logical, it is not explainable, it is not justifiable. It is a simple, naked, undeniable, self-evident fact. And this is a powerful fact. Wow. So this simple being, this simple state of affairs that actually obtains right here, right now, that is completely in full effect, that you are completely already a participant in, you already are in the same way that this is. So that is the powerful point in spirituality. That is the powerful asset that we have to work with, that we are, this is. And simply being with that, being with this self-evident, nakedly revealed fact, it reveals spontaneously what it is, because it is its nature to unfold itself. It is its nature to spin off implications. It is its nature to deepen. Aspects of what it consists of are a profound knowingness, a profound intelligence, a profound, let's call it impulse to connect with itself. So it wants what you want. If you want to get to know this, it wants to get to know itself too. So you are working with, you're going with the stream, you're working with the inherent tendency that is already present in the very being of this present moment. What we call the passage of time or the unfoldment of time is nothing other than this exploring itself. So us exploring ourselves and exploring this is simply merging with that already occurring action, that already occurring stream of event, and not holding ourselves apart from it in our imagination, not holding ourselves as individual, as personal, as separate, as having our own agenda. When our agenda becomes its agenda, then its power, its authority, what's doing all this, becomes our authority, becomes our energizer, becomes the source of our action. So this is a very powerful position to be in, and I recommend it. So if you'd like to have any discussion, please feel free. We have a microphone if you wouldn't mind using it to speak. That way we don't need it in this small room, but there are people listening online, and that way they can hear what you have to say. As we're sitting here, I suggest just feel this being, feel this. You are here. This is present. There is presence. The room is present. People are present. You are present, and it's all one presence. This presence is a powerful unifying fact that unites all these imputed phenomena into one astounding inconceivability. And I recommend you be with that, feel it, feel this presence when you're not talking, if you're not following the conversation, or even if you are, just be with this presence and let it reveal itself, reveal its astoundingness. If any of you don't know, we have chai available over here. Please feel free to go up and help yourselves. Feel free to come and go. There's no formality here.
Peter, if this is here and is always here, is now any different from before?
Before what?
This now. Any different from when I first started talking? Or what I perceived as yesterday?
Well, all of those notions are notions that occur within your consciousness now. So, yesterday, before, are all ideas that occur now. They can't occur any time other than now. And the way in which they occur and the way in which they are interrelated to now, the way in which they reveal aspects, inherent aspects of now, is implicit in the experience. So as you think of before, as you think of trying to be with change, I suggest you do it from the perspective of now. Look for, the only place you're going to find a meaningful before is as an aspect of now. The only place you're going to find meaningful change is as an aspect of now. So change, if it exists at all, is happening now. Before, if it's meaningful at all, is somehow relevant to now. So, again, we have simplistic preconceptions that, of course there's a before, there's an after, there's a yesterday, there's a tomorrow. We come with an elaborate set of biases that all of these things, all of these supposed ideas that are defined within a dictionary actually refer to real existent entities that are somehow different from each other. But this is not true. There's only one thing that exists, which is this. There's literally and absolutely only one thing that exists, which is this. And even to say it exists is not strictly true. It is as it is, and any kind of existence you can find will have to be found in how it is. So before, if it's meaningful at all, is an aspect of this. After, if it's meaningful at all, is an aspect of this. Change, if it's meaningful at all, is an aspect of this. Sameness, if it's meaningful at all, is an aspect of this. So again, we need to come to this fact, be with it, and let it show us what it is, and see the way in which it is what it is, and then it will, all of these notions, all of these questions will become clear. Time is happening right now, so future, present, and past are happening right now in the way that they are. But they aren't happening in any way other than the way that they are exactly. They aren't happening in some way that we imagine them. They're happening in the way they actually are happening. And so to be with this as it is, we have to see what that actually is, and it will not correspond to our ideas of it.
Let me try and put it another way. In that last piece of explanation you just gave, you mentioned the word now maybe 20 times. Mm-hmm. Is any one of those nows more propitious than any other? And is it possible that the next now might be even more propitious or less?
But you see, again, now you have this notion of other nows and a next now, and a more propitious or less propitious. In what way do those notions actually apply? Is there an other now? Can there be other nows? Is it meaningful to talk like that?
No.
So, okay, that's good. That's powerful. That's so great. Okay, so there are no other nows. So then letting the question rephrase itself in terms of the fact of the absolute uniqueness of the soul now, and yet the fact that this unique and soul now is so slippery, is so variable, is so different than itself inherently, that it can justify the fantasy of time, the fantasy of change, the fantasy of history, the fantasy of development, the fantasy of entropy. All of these fantasies are justified and are even implied by the way that this now is. But they are all implied in it. They are not implied in themselves as some other conditions that exist in some other place and time.
Hi. I've heard, I guess some teachings talk about attaining the state of no mind. And I guess by that they might mean not thinking. Like this rational mind, this conditioned, logical rational mind, is that something that would be good to throw out to get rid of, or is it just always an obstruction, or how do you look at that?
No, I don't think we need, the rational mind is not a problem. We merely need to see what it actually is, to see it in its true context. The rational mind is a small aspect of our inherent intelligence, which is a way of designating an aspect of what we are. And it's a relatively small part of this inherent intelligence, a relatively small functionality. For example, this same inherent intelligence is, making your heart beat, making you breathe, regulating your cellular metabolism. It's spontaneously processing your sensory input now. There's incredible detailed data being immediately perceived in your vision and sound and so on. That is not a product of thought. You don't have to think about seeing to see. Seeing is being processed right away, and this is evidence of an astounding functional intelligence. Likewise, the rational thought process, the deliberate thought process that actually thinks thoughts per se, that constructs logic and arguments and so on and so forth, is another small aspect of this inherent intelligence which is doing all of our spontaneous functioning. Now, I can't pretend to be an expert on these traditions that talk about no mind and all of that, but I would suggest that instead of no mind, I would say fundamental mind or fundamental intelligence, which is, as that implies, more fundamental than rational thought or conscious mind, or what most people on the street might say is their mind, their thinking mind. But again, they aren't necessarily opposites. They certainly aren't mutually exclusive. They're aspects of each other in the same way that your fingernails are an aspect of your body. They're an outgrowth of your body, but your body's not limited to the fingernails. The fingernails are a small subsystem. And likewise, the rational mind, the thinking mind, is a small subsystem of, call it the greater mind or the inherent mind or the functional intelligence that you consist of. And so it merely needs to be seen in its actual perspective, in its actual context. And then it is integrated. It's a part of your natural functioning. It's not an enemy. But it's not you. The problem with identifying with the rational mind is just that, defining yourself as this thinking principle, as you are your thoughts, you are your ideas, and you are not. You are the system that generates your thoughts and your ideas, and that also exists in vast other areas of experience that have nothing to do with thoughts and ideas.
Right.
Hi.
What you say about thought processes interfering is true, but what if you recognize that something other than thought is keeping you from recognizing the present as it is? Maybe something more physical, or just some unspoken barrier there.
I cannot understand how an experience of physicality, a physical sensation, could be a barrier to anything. It is simply a present phenomenon. The physical sensation reveals the present moment, reveals the presence, reveals reality. It does not hide it. The only thing that can hide reality is misunderstandings of it, which may or may not be conscious. And this I think is a slippery part that people often trip over. We may think, I'm not having any thoughts, I'm not thinking about it, but still, I'm coming up against something. But we can have beliefs that are based on thoughts, that are basically based on concepts that we hold subconsciously or something. We hold them intimately, so we don't think of them as thoughts, and yet we hold them to be true. For example, you may hold that the world exists objectively to you. You may believe that you are your physical body. You may believe these various other things that you might not experience as being an actual thought. And yet, the origin of that feeling, of that belief, of that way of holding your experience to be, is ultimately conceptual.
So how do you come up against that, or address that?
Okay, my recommendation is bypass it. My recommendation is ignore it. Go to a portion of your experience which is outside of the field of your dilemma, like sound, say. Go to sound. Right now there's sound happening, and this sound is not an idea. It's an immediate, mysterious presence in your experience, right? And you don't know what it is. Or maybe you do know what it is. Maybe you think a lot about sound. Okay, then go to something else. You can go to a physical sensation. You can go to vision. You can go to any one of your sensory fields. You can go to some area in your experience which is definitely present, but which you don't have a lot of ideas or feelings about. It's relatively neutral. It's relatively open. It's a relative unknown. It's ultimately a mystery, even if familiar. And if you be with that and familiarize yourself with that context of just mysterious presence, then from that perspective, you can then look back, so to speak, at areas that are where you have more ideas about them, you have more feelings about them, you have more ways that you are familiar with holding them, and from that context you may see that they are actually the same, they are actually equally mysterious presences that you don't in fact know anything about. And in this case, in this context, not knowing is our friend, unknowing is our friend. Realizing that this experience is fundamentally mysterious is very powerful to deconstruct our subtle, arrogant ways of thinking we know what something is, which is usually what our impediments take the form of. Because we don't really know what anything is. No one knows what anything is. You could get the greatest Nobel Prize-winning physicist that ever lived in here and ask them, what is this? What is matter? What is energy? What is light? And to a person they'd say, well, we don't know. We can say a lot about it, but we don't know what it really is. You know? And yet, most people walking down the street, well, you ask them, what is this? And they'll think they know. Oh, it's matter. It's light. You know, it's energy. This is, you know, I'm an evolved primate. You know, I have consciousness in my body, and you know, I mean, people will have a spiel that they more or less hold to be true. And if we're honest, there's absolutely no basis to hold anything whatsoever to be true, because no one knows. No one has a clue. You know, when you were 6 months old, you didn't know what anything was. It was just this mysterious presence that was, bang, there it shows up, you know, and there's this weird thing. And then you were gradually indoctrinated. Oh, no, you know, I'm mommy, that's daddy, this is a world, you know, you're you, and this is a floor, and this is a house, and this is a fire truck, and this is a car, and this is pain, and this is pleasure, and this is laughing, and, you know, and then we get indoctrinated into this whole way of holding things, and we sort of, it becomes subconscious or inherent, we just sort of hold it to be true. But we don't know any of it. We were taught it. It's just training, and it's not based on anything other than prior training that wasn't based on anything. You know, your parents didn't know either. They just held it long enough that they could say it with enough assertiveness. Oh no, this is a building. This is a world. This is Berkeley. You are a human being, you know. And it kind of makes sense. It seems sort of internally coherent, right? All the arguments, yeah, people are evolved primates and we live on this planet Earth and blah, blah, blah. You know, the whole sort of worldview has a coherence. So, yeah, sure, it could be true. But no one knows. Nobody knows. And this unknowing is completely manifest in this present experience of the present moment. In other words, what is not known is exactly this that is here, this being. No one knows what being is. No one knows what light is. No one knows what sound is. No one knows what consciousness is. Here it is. And just being with that unknowing is an openness, is an opening, it's referencelessness that is true, it's real, and it counters and ultimately dismantles this referencing that we're so used to doing that is not true, is not real, is arrogant, is bullshit. It's our ego structure, it's our claim to know, to have a clue, and we all know we don't have a clue, we all know we're faking it. You know, when you were 6 months old and you were, you know, your mommy asked you what's this, and you gave the wrong answer, you felt like shit. It's like, oh, I'm supposed to know that, you know? And so we have this profound motivation to know. We're supposed to know. You're supposed to know the words for things. You're supposed to know who you are. You're supposed to be a performing seal. You know, you're supposed to, someone asks you a question, you're supposed to have the answer, right? It's just basic tribal, you know, programming, wanting to belong to the tribe, wanting monkey see, monkey do. And so we have this profound urge to at least pretend to know, even if we don't really, even if we know we're faking it. We're supposed to put on a good show. And we've been doing it so long, we've forgotten it's a show. We've forgotten we're faking it, and we think it's true. We think we really know anything. But if we get really honest with your experience, you'll notice that you do not know what anything is. You do not know what you are. You do not know what consciousness is. You do not know how this is happening. You know, I mean, if you just get down to it, is that the truth or not? Just be with that fact, and then in the context of that unknowing, well, what is this? And of course, you won't be able to say because you don't know. But that's the position where you can begin to actually look and see And maybe it'll show you directly, not conceptually, not verbally, just by being. Because you are it. You are consciousness. You are matter. You are energy. So you have an absolute intimate access, contact with these things. So you can be with them. But as long as you think you know what they are, even unconsciously, you're just going to be stuck with that. You're just going to sit there. You're going to be grappling with your own arrogance, basically. I mean, it's not a deliberate arrogance. We're innocent dupes. We don't know any better. We got sucked into this way of functioning. But we can get out of it because we aren't all in it. The part of us that doesn't know is right here, right now. We just need to acknowledge that and be with that part of us. And that part of us is the real part. That part of us is the honest part. That part of us is the genuine, authentic part.
Thank you.
Sure. Peter sounds like a freight train when it comes on. I like it. This presence is mysterious, this presence. How is this here? The mysteriousness of this presence opens to limitlessness, opens to astoundingness. It reveals itself. Just the fact of this presence, the mystery of this presence. How can this be? How can this be? There's no answer to that question. And yet it's right here, right now. So we have most intimate access to this mystery.
there is a wondering online, and they're saying, so if no one knows anything, how can we trust what you are saying?
Don't. What I'm saying, I'm not offering as something to accept or believe. I'm offering as an invitation to investigate, an invitation, a challenge to play with, to explore, to find out for yourself. Words and ideas have no usefulness whatsoever. The only thing that has power, that has usefulness, is direct experience. So I invite you to investigate your direct experience and, prove me wrong. Look for yourself and find out for yourself what this is. I recommend it highly. By all means, don't take what I say on some kind of a faith. It's an invitation to explore, a challenge. The fundamental fact is that what this is not what you think it is. No matter how sophisticated a notion you have of what this is, it will be wrong. It will be inaccurate. And in the face of that, I invite you to let go of whatever it is you're thinking this is. Be with it as an unknown quantity, and investigate. Find out for yourself what it is. If this isn't what you think it is, then what is it? There's a good koan. If this isn't what you think it is, what is it? Just be with it in the face of that invitation to explore.
So it sounds like there's a kind of development of knowing. There's a profound knowing of not knowing. But from that not knowing comes a kind of knowing.
From not knowing on a human level comes knowing on the actual level. What this is a knowing. This is made of knowing. What we call experience is made of a knowing. You might describe it in a very simplified fashion as consciousness knowing itself, or consciousness knowing its energy. That's what experience consists of. So, on a very profound level, this is a knowing. The verb being could be equated with the verb knowing. But it's not a human knowing, it's not a conceptual knowing, it's not a knowing of being able to define or describe. It's a most primal knowing of experiencing, of knowing intimately, of knowing in the biblical sense, literally. So this discovering, not knowing on a human level, is the beginning of entering into true knowing, which is what your being actually is. Your being consists of this inherent knowing, your consciousness knowing itself, your consciousness knowing its own being as all of this experience.
Is that something that evolves, that develops?
Your intimate identification with that can develop and can deepen. And also, this knowing by its very nature is a continuous and eternal unfolding, which could be described as a kind of an evolution. But that notion, that kind of idea of evolution, I think, is a little too simplistic. It is an eternal and constant unfolding. And as you discover this knowing and discover this unfolding and identify with it more and more progressively until you realize you are nothing other than this unfolding, you are nothing other than this inherent knowing that reality consists of, so you're participating in this knowing, in this eternal unfolding absolutely, that is the discovery of what you are, that is self-realization. And it is an eternal unfolding but it never becomes other than itself. It never becomes different than itself. So in one sense, it's not an evolving in a simple sense.
So if one
You talked about this mysterious presence having authority over us, and you mentioned coming with our agenda. Would you suggest that we come with no agenda whatsoever?
Well, yes, definitely. I suggest exactly that. I wouldn't say this mysterious presence has authority over us. I would say that it is a primal fact that we have very direct access to because of the fact of its undeniable intimate being. This presence is your actual experience, so you have completely intimate access to it. And it is also obviously and demonstrably mysterious. How is this happening? Why is anything happening? Why is all of this here? What is putting it here? How is it here? How is it being perceived? What is experiencing it? What is consciousness? What is energy? What is, all of these sorts of questions are, again, invitations to look at this. And if we approach it thinking we already know what it is, then we're kind of crippling ourselves and we're biased in our investigation. Whereas if we say, well, this is here, let me assume I know nothing about it, start from a blank slate and see what can I know about this? What is this? And the more intimately we are with it, perhaps we can begin to get more of a sense of what it actually consists of, how it actually works.
Come with no plans or goals?
Certainly. Because if we bring plans or goals, if they are inappropriate, if they are oblique to what this actually is, they'll just confuse the issue.
But if they're in harmony with...
Well, they may or may not be, but we can't know that. That's kind of a crapshoot. I don't know what this is, but maybe what I think I want is in line with what it is. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
But you only find out.
But if you suspend all goals, look and see what this is, maybe you will discover that what you're holding turns out to be relevant, but you don't need to be holding it continually in your investigation in order to discover that fact. Maybe you'll discover you were absolutely right all along. Maybe you'll discover, gosh, what I thought this was is exactly what it is. I'm a genius, I just know it. I'm right on the money. That's great, cool. But you would arrive at that result, if it's true, by being with this nakedly, more efficiently, arguably, than being it with your agenda, on the off chance that your agenda has some error in it. And it is absolutely certain that any agenda will have error in it because no idea can capture a reality. In other words, this is not an idea. We can have ideas about it, but the ideas are going to be partial. And the map is not the terrain, right? And to have a map that accurately captures the terrain, it would have to be the terrain itself. To have an accurate map of Berkeley, you'd have to know where every single quark is, where it's moving, what its quantum state was, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which cannot be done. So better to suspend the maps, be with the terrain, and see if you can discover what it is.
Are we separate from this mysterious presence, or is that what we are?
It's what we are. But again, discover that for yourself, because the notion that you're separate or not separate is, again, an idea that you're holding which cannot be accurate ultimately, because no idea can accurately capture an actual condition, even if it can indicate it usefully.
Hi, Peter. I want to get back to knowing, because what you said about it resonated very much with me.
John?
especially the part of,
Music. Thank you. Sorry.
especially the part of how that knowing is really born out of unknowing. First realizing that you don't know diddly squat in reality. And then I guess, this is where the question comes in, and my sense of it, that knowing is a very primal, very basic. It's know that I am, not that I'm a man or that I'm even a human being, but just know that I am, know my experiences, know my sensory perceptions, whatever, my experiences. Very, very primal kind of knowing, which is basically my very nature. You can equate it with consciousness, whatever else word you use. Is that, am I on the right track there?
Yeah, but again, the challenge is really to discover what the actual knowing, what the inherent knowing is. And what you have said indicates partially what it is, but it's not an idea and it's not anything you can say. It's a fact. And the point is to be with that fact and discover what that fact truly is. And then you will discover the way in which you are that fact, the way in which all this is that fact. And this fact will reveal itself non-verbally and very directly and very self-verifyingly.
Yeah, that's sort of I'm thinking along the same lines. It's not specific knowledge of anything. It gives you no facts, no specificity of anything. It's just sort of it's almost a feeling, or almost a sense. Knowing is a good word, really, but non-specific knowing, not that details, whatever, so-called facts, but just know that I am, or know my experience at the moment.
Yeah. Well, this human word knowing is inaccurate. The true knowing is more of a synonym for experiencing, rather than knowing in the sense of knowing what something is. Knowing as a word has, multiple definitions and implications. But the inherent knowing is a direct participation in its being, because being turns out to be a knowing. What exists is experience, and experience is inherently primally known. The very being of experience is this knowing of experience. So knowing is one way of putting this actual event on its most primal level.
Yeah, I guess slippery slope for me is when I go into specifics. I know, and then whatever else I say, I know that I'm a man, I know that I'm whatever.
Sure.
I'm down the slippery path. But just basic, like you said, it could be called experience, being, or whatever. But that sense of I know I am, I know I exist, seems to be the basic fabric of what I am, or who I am, or whatever.
Yeah. Any notion you bring along with it to this investigation is just going to be a stumbling block, no matter how subtly you bring it. Even the idea that I am, or even the idea of existence itself, any idea, to be with this absolutely nakedly, absolutely openly, with complete indeterminacy, absolute indeterminacy of not even knowing if it is, if it isn't, if there's an it, just absolutely unqualified, but it doesn't go away. And in that context, it can reveal itself to you nakedly, it can reveal itself to you accurately.
Yeah, thank you. That's well put, because I experience that whenever I go the next step, knowing anything specific, there I go. But it's just. Thanks.
So, Peter, there's a question. Are you talking about us knowing we don't know what we know?
Well, that's a good starting point. No, you don't know what you know, and then where are you? Then what are you? And what is this? That's just setting the stage. That's just clearing the table. Then the real work begins.
Or are you talking about us not knowing that we actually know?
There's no or there. You don't realize that you don't know anything whatsoever. You don't even know whether or not you know. Having any frame of reference is in doubt. And that's your big starting point. Any frame of reference whatsoever is completely up for grabs. Then where are you? If you have no idea whatsoever what this is, or even if this is, then where are you? And that's the time to look. If you have even a hint or a whisper or a slight wisp of some sense of knowing anything whatsoever, no matter how vague or general, it's a boulder in your path. Because you will tend to see everything in terms of that notion, which we've been doing that all our lives, right? You know, we have this notion, well, I am, I'm Peter Brown, I'm this, I'm that, and then we see everything in terms of that, and how well does that work? How well has that served us? If that served you well enough, then you're wasting your time coming to these kinds of inquiries. But if that's proved to be inadequate or shallow or problematic for you, then I'm proposing an alternative approach. So what if maybe I'm not Peter Brown? I'm not saying I'm not. That would be knowing something. I don't know. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. What if I just don't know whether or not I'm Peter Brown? I don't know whether or not I am. I don't know whether or not this is Berkeley. I don't know whether or not this is a world. I don't know whether or not I'm awake. I don't know whether or not anything exists at all. I don't know whether or not anything doesn't exist at all. I don't know whether or not there's any things. I don't know whether or not there's consciousness. Where am I? Where am I? When you can't say where you are is the time that you can start seeing where you are. As long as you can say where you are in any sense, no matter how general, you won't be able to accurately see where you are. Even I am is too big of a presumption.
Times that I've been in sort of like harmony with life, it seems almost like it's a setup, all the synchronicity that can happen. Do you think that there might be like a future life that's a future that's already laid out for me and that I only need to surrender to it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure, who knows? Maybe. I wonder. Is it all predestined? Is it all laid out? Well, maybe. Is it all just being made up as we go along? Well, maybe. Who knows?
It appears like it's a setup, though.
Well, there seems to be a profound intelligence at work. And this profound intelligence seems to generate an awful lot of sort of functional coincidence and functional coherence in systems. And exactly what that consists of would be very interesting to investigate.
Well, kind of on the knowing thing, I had this conversation with a friend who lives across the street from Hewlett Packard down in Silicon Valley a couple of days ago, and he said he bought some stock in this Canadian mine company that they were mining uranium. This is about a year ago or something. And he went to check with it a couple of days after the incident in Japan, and he had lost like 95% of his money. And he said, I'm never going to, invest in anything to do with nuclear again because it's dead. So my question is, I don't know, could maybe Source be trying to teach human beings something? You know what I mean? You got my question?
But how can you know what is trying to be taught? Because you can't get a big enough picture. If you take a little snapshot like that, the lesson might be, don't buy uranium. If you wait around 100 years or 50 years or 10 years or a week until things turn around and all of a sudden nuclear is the next big thing again, then the moral is buy low. The time to buy uranium is after it's crashed 90%. My advice.
Yeah.
That's good. Buying when it's high before the crash is not good advice.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
Now's the time to be buying it.
Yeah. And I just want to see what you think about this other thing. Just about every meditation teacher, like monks who are trained in the East, almost to the one, believe in reincarnation. And then a lot of Western teachers do not believe in reincarnation. And is that just simply conditioning?
I don't believe in incarnation. And I think if you look very closely at what incarnation consists of, you will discover what reincarnation consists of. Incarnation is the apparent coming into being of experience in the present moment, which is an omnipresent fact, as we all know. And reincarnation is the fact that this fact perpetuates itself. So in other words, the next moment is a reincarnation of the previous moment. And I believe that condition is eternal. But I do not believe there is any incarnation in any simplistic sense as people may hold it to be. I don't think there's any body that you exist within. On the contrary, your body exists within your experience. You are the container of your body. Your body doesn't contain you. So you were never incarnated.
Okay.
Well, look at it. Where does your body exist? How do you know you have a body? Right now, how do you know you have a body? You feel it, you see it, right? Where does that feeling and seeing happen? In your consciousness, right? Okay. Now, how do you know you have consciousness? It's not your body that sees it. It's consciousness that sees itself, right?
Okay.
So the body depends upon consciousness. Body is an object within consciousness. Even consciousness is an object within consciousness. So how do you get from that consciousness is an object within the body? You can't do it. It's just you have to believe it on faith. There's no evidence for it. My hand exists as an object of my vision. Okay? My hand exists as an object of my sense of touch. When I go to sleep, my body disappears. I don't see it, I don't feel it. Right? And I start dreaming, and all of a sudden there's a new body there. It might be a completely different body. You ever have dreams where your body is different? Maybe you're young, or maybe your hair's different, or so, I don't know what, right? You ever have a dream like that? And so you go to sleep and you start dreaming, and all of a sudden there's a different body. You're incarnated in that body just as much as you're incarnated in this body, which is not at all. It's appearing in your consciousness. So you are that within which bodies appears.
Okay, I'll chew on that one.
Peter, if I am is saying too much, what about it is?
What do you mean by it? Okay, let's drop the it and just say is.
Okay.
Is that saying too much?
I don't know.
I don't know
I'm still
either.
wallowing around back in I am.
Well, yeah. But that's an interesting place. It's an interesting thing to consider, isn't it? You know? So, what does it is mean? That's interesting. What does just is mean? That's interesting. How about what does mean? Is it is? I don't know. Is it isn't? I don't know. Is it it? I don't know. Is it I? I don't know. It's... Is it? Isn't it? I think that's a good question. In other words, when you're not asking any question, what's the answer? Asking a question kind of presupposes a certain quality of answer. You know, any question sort of sets the framework for some expectation of some more or less broad range of what the answer is going to consist of. And if you don't ask any question, then what's the range of the potential answer? It's, you know, and that's an answer that's worth getting. That's an answer that's worth having. So don't ask any question and see what the answer is.
Peter, there's a question of whether spiritual healing is possible.
There's nothing but. The very nature of reality is spiritual healing. Spirit is healing itself through a process of self-revelation.
What's the purpose of this life for you? Any purpose?
It's not in that category. It's a meaningless question. because there's no because what this is beyond purpose and purposelessness. What this is profoundly meaningful in what it is, in what it is doing. But what that is can't be said. So that question can't be answered. But it is profoundly meaningful. And it is serving and achieving its purpose on an ongoing basis.
Which is what?
Can't be said. Can't be said. It can't be qualified in human terms. That would be too narrow, too simplistic. What's the purpose of galaxies being created and then just being destroyed? What's the purpose of stars being born and then exploding, You can't sum that up in something simple, a nice simple sound bite. It's, the purpose is,
But you do find it meaningful.
Well, it's profoundly meaningful because it's an expression of a profound intelligence. Like a dream. What's the meaning or purpose of a dream? Dreams are profoundly meaningful. Consciousness creates these amazing pageants for its own spontaneous purpose, for its own spontaneous motivation, but we can't say what that is with any specificity. It's easy to say superficial things about consciousness is exploring its potentialities, or consciousness is working out possibilities for, different ways of handling things in its waking world and blah, blah, blah. But we don't know. We know that we know the fact that, wow, these consciousness generates these incredibly detailed, very specific, and at the same time very nebulous dreams. There's a lot of intelligence, there's a lot of structure, there's a lot of intent inherent in the fact that this is so particular. So this is meaningful. We can't say what the meaning is in any simple sense. And likewise with all of this, look at this incredible detail. Look at this detail. The detail of life, the detail of matter, the detail of galaxies, the detail of energy. It's inconceivably detailed. It's inconceivably explicit. So it's an expression of a profound structural intelligence, of a profound functionality for its own meaning. But to try and sum that up in a simple human phrase or notion is absurd.
This was a little earlier, but there was a question of whether consciousness and the body are one.
Sure. Consciousness and anything that exists are one. Because what appears exists within consciousness, so they are one. But you can't say what it is. You can't say what consciousness is. You can't say what apparitions are. You can't say what the body is. So to say that they're one doesn't really tell you very much. But it's a powerful notion, because if you want to see the one, look at the other. If you want to know about consciousness, you can look at bodies. If you want to know about bodies, you can look at consciousness, because they reveal each other. Because they are one. They're two names for the same thing. Think of a dream. In a dream, there's all of this apparition, all these bodies, all this functionality, and there's absolutely nothing there but consciousness. You wake up in the morning and you realize there was absolutely nothing there. I was dreaming. There were no things there. There was no world there. There was no space there. There were no activities there. There was nothing there but consciousness, the dreaming consciousness. So if you want to know about the dreaming consciousness, you can look at the dream itself, and this is exactly what you're seeing. Likewise with this. You know, this body exists solely in consciousness. So if I want to know about consciousness, I can look at this, and I'm looking at consciousness. I can learn a very great deal about consciousness by looking at this. Nothing departs from experience. Everything occurs within and consists of experience. So you can learn about experience by looking at any aspect of experience. You want to know what experience is? Look at the floor. Listen to sound. Look at light. Think a thought. You're seeing experience, so you're getting a direct revelation of what experience is. And of course, experience reveals what we call consciousness, because consciousness is one with experience. Sort of a sleepy satsang tonight. We should all get up and do some jumping jacks or dance or something. What do you think? Bruce has got the right idea. Come on. Little motion. Yeah, there we go. That's right. That's a good bumper sticker. No question, big answer. I like it.
Is there any part of the experience that is not consciousness?
How could there be? How could it be experienced if it wasn't in consciousness? And if it's in consciousness, how can you know anything about it, anything about what might be there that is not in consciousness? In other words, you can't know about anything whatsoever that isn't in your consciousness, right? Because you won't know that it exists. It won't be a part of your reality.
Well, I would think that the experience is also the experience of knowing, of incorrect knowing.
Yes, but incorrect knowing occurs within consciousness. All confusion occurs within consciousness. All ignorance occurs within consciousness. It reveals consciousness.
So then the experience is the whole.
Yes.
Okay.
You can't find anything other than experience. Experience is a word that we have for reality. The only thing that can be found is experience. Period.
Thinking about consciousness and experience, is it a good idea to reduce everything to experience and then to reduce it again to consciousness? Or, I mean, the way I've been thinking about it is consciousness is sort of baked into experience.
Well, we have these two words, consciousness and experience. what do they refer to? Do they refer to two different things? Can you find a consciousness other than experience? Can you find an experience other than consciousness? Do these words actually refer to two different things?
No. But is it a good, so I guess it's not a good strategy to come down on one side or the other.
If there's no sides, then you're just liable to confuse the issue by trying to come down on one or the other.
Right, right, yeah.
I would say just this. Is this consciousness? Certainly. Is this experience? Certainly. But you don't need to worry about whether it's consciousness or experience. It's this.
Right.
And you don't need to qualify it as consciousness or as experience, as enlightenment or as ignorance or nirvana or samsara.
Right.
It's simply this. And then, okay, cool, be with that. What is this? What is this? That's the first and last question. What is this? And you won't get an answer in words. You won't get an answer that you can repeat.
Right, thanks.
Speaking of dreams, just a little clarification. You say that the world of dreams has just as much reality to it as the world we experience in waking life. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I recommend investigating that. A dream is an experience. A dream is a presence of some patternings of energy in your consciousness, right? Waking life is the presentation of some patternings of energy in your consciousness. So, in what way are they different? Dreams are unstable. Dreams are unique. Every instant in a dream is completely unlike every other instant in a dream. Here in this experience, it's unstable, it's unique. Every instant of this experience is completely unlike every other instant of this experience. I don't know. I think it's worth investigating. I think that, again, qualifying things in terms of dreaming or waking or sleep or life or death or incarnation or reincarnation, all of these elaborations are being applied to what actual phenomena? The phenomena of this present experience, right? When you're dreaming, what is it? It's this present experience. When you're asleep, what is it? It's this present experience. When you're sitting here in this room, what is it? It's this present experience. So in that context, the interesting question, rather than comparing dreams and waking, to me is, well, what is this present experience? On a more profound level than just simply, is it a dream or is it awake or is it more or less real than something else? Here it is. It's as real as it is, right? It's present. So when you're dreaming, you can say the same thing. It's present. It's as real as it is. But what is it? What is this presence? And what is this presence is the same question now as it would be in a dream, isn't it? There's this consciousness, this perceiving consciousness, this incredibly dynamic, indeterminate, changing panorama of energies as a field of experience within the consciousness being perceived by consciousness. Right? I mean, that's the case right here, right now, isn't it? And in a dream, you could say the same, that's the case there too. So, rather than worrying about what is a dream, what is being awake, I would say, what is experience? Because that's a more profound question. That's a question that's true regardless of how you're qualifying the state of experience vis-a-vis waking or dream or sleep or life or death or whatever, right?
Certain laws seem to govern the waking experience that don't apply in the dream state.
Sure, arguably, but saying that is not a very strong statement, because what do these laws come from? What's doing these laws? You know, and the dream state is not wholly unstructured. The dream state has a certain degree of structure too. What's doing that degree of structure? And is what's doing that degree of structure fundamentally different than what's doing this degree of structure?
It's interesting, anyone who tries to remember their dreams at some point loses track of what happened in the dream state and what happened in the real, waking life.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? and then we have memory. Memory is very dreamlike in terms of its imprecision, in terms of its mutability, in terms of its lack of stability. And if you look very closely, most of our experience of the waking world consists of memory. You know that you're in a room talking to people because you remember you are, right? If you just took a snapshot of this moment, where am I? What's going on? I don't know. But you remember you came to this room, and you remember these people are here, and you remember you're talking. And so this memory that's supplying all this is very dreamlike. It's very slippery. It's very imprecise. It's very sort of full of implications and not a whole lot of real stability, is it? It's very interesting.
Every moment involves selective perception.
Yeah, exactly so. What's going on here is a interesting, very slippery phenomena that includes all sorts of aspects that are subtle, that are not simplistic. It's easy to think, oh, this is simple. The waking of the world is very simple. It's very sort of mechanical and stable. But if you look at it more closely, it's interesting. It's not like that at all. It's got a lot of very slippery elements that we sort of take for granted and just assume are more solid than they actually are.
Is merging of sensorial modalities a normal byproduct of noticing, like synesthesia?
Yes. We discovered that our hard and fast and simplistic division of our experience into different sense groups that are very discrete and separate from each other turns out, when we look at it, our actual experience more subtly and more closely, turns out to be largely arbitrary. And we discovered that sight is not very different than sound. Sound is not very different than touch. They're all very similar, and they all they have an interesting interrelationship with each other.
So we could say that when we have sight, sound, and feeling all separated into distinct categories, we're actually causing that to happen in that way.
Yeah, we create this in our imagination. In experience, they aren't that separate at all, but we imagine them as separate because we imagine our bodies as concrete entities. We imagine our sense fields as very separate. In actuality, the the stream of real-time sensation is presented like a gestalt. It's presented as a sort of an overwhelming sea of information. Any people that are deep meditators or who have taken strong drugs and this sort of thing will have very direct experience of this. That experience comes as a single wavefront that is, the interrelationships within it are subtle and not simplistically obvious in the way that we categorize them with our conscious mind and categorize them into separate sense groups and all of that.
So in the last moment here, can you explain what memory is?
No. I can't explain what anything is. But here it is. Memory, like everything else, is an absolutely miraculous functioning of this inconceivable and magical divine presence that you are. Well, it's about quitting time. I'd like to thank you all for coming and wish you a good evening.